Oh, hello and welcome. It's Reanimated. My name is Stuart and I am in California, and joining me from New York is H.A. Conrad.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. We are here today to talk about the film Dracula from 2025, also known as Dracula: A Love Tale. But before we can get to that, we're going to be talking about a little bit of news that has dropped. I guess we can also acknowledge the fact that today is the high holy day of the Christian religion.
Oh, again, I guess.
I've seen already a couple of memes about how, you know, Jesus was a zombie, but that's
The
because of the
usual,
circles.
the usual there.
That's the circles of the internet that I hang out in. In the news, we got a couple little things. Nothing like earth-shattering, although one of them might be. And one of them is a project that's going to be dropping on. It's kind of like a direct to streaming situation. What's being billed as an urban zombie tale,
Hmm.
Bloodthirsty. You saw this trailer. What'd you think?
I did. And I mean, there's not a lot to go on from it other than, we see some zombies, we see kind of the premise, and then we hear a bit of a voiceover about, how this came about. So, this comes out in May though, so I guess we won't have that long to wait, before we get to see what it's about. But it seems like this is a world, or this is a situation caused by the desire to create, a invincible soldier, or a soldier where it doesn't put people at risk. Although at the end, it's like, you have to make sacrifices and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, bit ham-handed with the voiceover
mm,
doing all that.
it felt like it was like they were. I don't know. It felt like they were doing a lot of work when probably the trailer should have stood for itself. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I don't think you need to explain the premise of the film in the
no,
trailer.
no.
Uh, like this does feel like somebody's first film, but I'm on board. I think that starting here in this genre is a great place to start, and especially if you want to tell more complicated stories through metaphor. Sign me up. Just, maybe don't spoon feed the metaphor out,
Mm,
or. Also, I like the you can sell the premise of the film. It's going to be like star-crossed lovers start the film together, then get separated, then have to find their way back together. And I'm kind of always around for that. That's just a good time, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
All right. Well, so that's Bloodthirsty coming out May 12th on digital. We'll have a look for it. And then on Dread Central, they were reporting that an Indonesian series called Zona Merah is getting adapted to film. Of course, we hadn't seen Zona Merah as a series. We could
Nope.
try to find it. Even the trailer for this film was only in Indonesian and with no availability of subtitles.
But usually then when this kind of thing goes through, they do like sell it to a lot of like, the streaming services, and they'll tend
Yeah.
to do some kind of, although as we know, some of the AI subtitles and translation is not always the best,
Yeah.
but hopefully we'll be at least able to watch it for sure. So that
I
seems
like
exciting.
that Dread Central, and I think I saw it on one or two other horror news websites where we're picking this up, meaning hey, it's already got the interest of English language markets, at
Yeah.
least in the fan zone. Whether it gets picked up by a distributor, that'll be cool if they do. But I do hope they spend a little money on localization, like we've complained about already this year.
Yep.
And that looked like another interesting story. At least the trailer for the movie, I'm assuming, was a lot about workers' rights and rioting and how workers were being so exploited that they became zombies or something along those lines. Sign me up. I'm here for that too.
Indeed.
Okay, and then finally, the biggest news, the best for last, perhaps. There's been some controversy, not controversy, but like outcry about Matthew Lillard in the last year because Tarantino said that he was a bad actor.
Yeah, and I mean,
And I don't like that. I think Tarantino is unnecessarily cruel sometimes.
yeah.
I don't understand why that's part of his personality. I like Matthew Lillard. I have since Scream because he
Yeah.
was named Stewart in that film. That's the only reason, not because he was a great performer. And he apparently he was on a podcast in the last week or so and revealed that he had been on, like, maybe him and uh God, what's the guy's name? Negan.
Oh, Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Thank you. Jeffrey Dean Morgan had been like neck and neck for the role.
To me, it's like honestly, this was very surprising and a surprising admission because I can't visualize, and maybe this is just because he did so well. I feel like Jeffrey Dean Morgan is so Negan.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could have seen. I do like Matthew Lillard a lot, but he's almost a little bit more like dramatic and exaggerated in a way that Jeffrey Dean Morgan isn't, just in terms of like the roles and things that he's done. Though he must have done pretty well if he was cast at least for a few minutes. I just don't think he has the weight and the gravity that Jeffrey Dean Morgan did to pull this off.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
Jeffrey Dean Morgan now has had like 10 years to be cementing himself as this
right,
guy.
but he walked in there and cemented it pretty quickly.
Yeah, he sure
So,
did. I mean, the thing about Matthew Lillard, and he kind of dropped off my radar for a while. I think if he'd gotten this role, it would have been big for his career. Um, but he is playing more villains right now. Like he's in the most recent season of Daredevil as kind of a shadowy bad guy. He's in Cross, the second season of Cross, as like a bad guy too. So I think he's obviously he's got the ability, the chops to play villains. It would have been really fun, I think, to see maybe a Walking Dead What If where Matthew Lillard is Negan instead of Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I would think that could have been really cool. I mean, like he even says in the interview, he's like, I wouldn't have been as masculine or as macho as Jeffrey Dean Morgan, but I would have brought like a kind of a mania to it. And I could see a maniacal Negan, right? Like he can, and Negan, even the way Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays him, is funny. So Matthew Lillard being a very funny guy. Did I mention
yeah.
I saw him play D&D like a couple years ago in San Francisco on stage? So much fun.
Oh, I don't think so, but that's fun.
Yeah, it was cool. Uh, yeah, so yeah, he's a funny guy. Like he has great innate humor. As it turns out, so does Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Like they're both funny and can deliver humor very well. I think it would have been good either way. I have been happy with Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance though mostly.
Me as well, but I did feel a little bit bad because Matthew Lillard was like, "Oh, that could have been 10 years of work." However,
Huh, yeah.
maybe not because that's Negan was supposed to die, and essentially they were just
Hmm.
so enamored of Jeffrey D. Morgan's performance that they just kind of kept him going. So I don't know if that would have been the case with Matthew Lillard, but we'll never know.
Yeah,
So, and I think that wraps up our news.
that's the news.
But speaking of characters or that get, have different actors and visions, we're going to be talking about Dracula today. And this is the Luc Besson film that came out in 2025. And, there's been a lot of Dracula films and interpretations,
Yeah,
tons and tons.
yeah,
So, so I'm excited to chat with you about this today.
yeah.
So this has a pretty great cast, and I don't, Caleb Landry Jones as Dracula, Christoph Waltz as sort of the priest, kind of a Van Helsing role. And then Zoe Bleu as Elisabetta or Mina, and there was somebody else that was like really
Matilda
yeah,
Angelis as Maria was pretty good. I
yeah.
don't know that like once you get past Caleb Landry Jones, Christoph Waltz, Zoe Blue is what you know what her heritage is?
What?
She's the daughter of Rosanna Arquette. And once you hear
Oh my
that,
gosh, there
you
that totally do you know what's so funny? I
you
did
can
not
see it
know
in her
that.
face, right?
I didn't know that, and I actually was like, wow, she looks so much like Rosanna Arquette. So that makes sense because hey,
Yep.
there you go.
She's got those
Um,
Arquette features, or some of them
yep.
anyway. Yeah, so like frankly, I don't know most of these other actors, but um yeah, I thought the cast was pretty good. Caleb Landry Jones and Christoph Waltz, they're doing their best. They're doing their best. You know what didn't do this movie any favors?
What?
A certain picture named Nosferatu, which we saw in the last 12
Yeah,
months. Like
yeah.
there's just when you think about Nosferatu and then you see this film, you're like, oh my God, it's like finger painting compared to like a Matisse, you
Well,
know? It's just it was rough, man. And there I was like the most critical or skeptical of Eggers filmmaking. I'm like, oh, we don't need. 6,000 trained rats and, camera shots only lit by candles. And we don't need all that. But then I look at the Luc Besson version of this vision. I'm just like, oh my God, it's garish. It's overlit. It's
Well,
too colorful.
well, it's also, I mean, he was going for a different thing and he was going for more of a romantic love story. Obviously, the Dracula, a love tale, like the sort of set the stage, although it's now just Dracula.
Yeah.
Which I think, I think he had a certain vision. He usually does, and you could see that. In terms of the production of the film, they used a lot of like the VFX for like the exterior of the castle. A lot, there's a bunch of scenes um, where Dracula's kind of going through Europe, mesmerizing people and whatever, and it shows like a big like time shift and his it's an interesting idea, but I think that they kind of overused it and that was one of the things they did with it. And then there's also a lot of scenes through Paris, which they relied on a lot of digital, and I think you could feel that a lot more. They did do practical sets too, and obviously spent an enormous amount of time on the costuming and I just think it's just a very different sensibility entirely.
Yeah.
And this isn't, although this is certainly a Gothic love story, it's not the same darkness that Nosferatu is. And so it's interesting that they decided to make these two movies in almost like, I don't want to say parallel timelines, but kind of. Like it just seems a little, it seems like an interesting choice to, you know, come out
I'm
with both of these at the same time.
I'm
And
looking at Basson's filmography,
yeah,
and like it's speckled with all these super bright color palettes, like
right,
The
right,
Fifth
right.
Element. I
Yeah.
mean, he's done movies that I really, really like The Fifth Element,
Hmm.
like Leon the Professional. And well, Subway was one of his first, and that was quite dark, but that goes back a long time. Valerian, The City of a Thousand Planets, and
Hmm.
Lucy. These are hugely first. They're all like action set piece films, and they're very, very bright and colorful. And so,
And this felt
yeah,
a little bit closer to the Coppola Dracula, Dracula
down to
idea.
the wig, down to that
Yeah. Yeah,
hairstyle.
which I was like, oh, that's like an interesting choice to do that when that's such an established thing that Coppola did and with his film. And it felt almost like a reimagining of that. And so that was to me an interesting choice because I think if you're going to try to put your own stamp on it, maybe, I mean, they have it in Paris instead of London, but essentially it's the same idea. This incredibly, they went to a lot of trouble to do the costume design and get fabric from like the Jacquard factory and that was based on historical paintings and they got fabric for there's like this big veil that she has that in one of the beginning scenes that apparently that it was they were like we have to have this fabric from Japan to do this and so they spend obviously a lot of time and attention for those kinds of details,
Yeah.
but to not package it or not to interpret it in a way that is more like closer to whatever Luc Besson's vision and was interesting. Although I guess this was his vision, so I'm not saying it wasn't, but he even had said, I don't really, I'm not really interested in horror. I don't really like that genre, which is a very funny thing for him to say.
Oh, this is the
But
least scary movie I've ever seen. Like, there's
oh
no
yeah, sure,
horror.
sure.
There's no
But he
like,
wanted to make it more of a love story and a tortured love story, which I guess he
yeah.
succeeded
It's
at.
the
But
it's this weirdly the least horrific version of Dracula that I've ever seen.
yeah.
And that's other than like Count Chocula or like, the Count on Sesame Street.
Mm,
There's like nothing scary at all.
yeah.
And like when you're watching Harker go into Count Dracula's Count Dracula's castle, and they're sitting there having the dinner, and they're just having like a yuck good time.
I
Like
know.
nobody's nervous. Harker is like so psychically dull that he doesn't even know that he's in danger at any time.
Yeah,
And
well, he's got
Dracula's like, "Oh, you're so funny. I'm laughing at your jokes." It's just like, yeah, like I don't understand like the tone that he was going for and
yeah.
the content that he had to work with are at odds with each other.
And, I would also say that Caleb Landry Jones, there's, especially if people are making the obvious comparisons, the difference between what he's doing and what Gary Oldman is doing. And he looks bizarrely like a weird Gary Oldman sometimes, just even down to like the costuming and the top hat and everything like that. And it's really, I just think it's really hard not to draw those comparisons. And I don't think I'm the only one who felt that way. Although apparently people were saying that the character, Gary Oldman was, and we get a little bit more of the backstory obviously in this because it's a long movie. Um, but we don't, I don't think it was, I think they felt like very similar characters to me. With a little bit more time to fill in the backstory. Is that what you felt like? I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen that other film, but
Yeah, I was mostly sitting there with Skarsgård's, you know, Nosferatu
on your
bouncing
mind,
around in
yeah.
my head. But other than like the very superficial, oh, almost exactly the same hairstyle that the Gary Oldman Dracula had. I don't recall much of his vibe.
I mean, he's going, I mean, in the Coppola version, I mean, he's going to find Mina
Hmm.
and his former love or whatever, and it's almost exactly beat for beat the same idea. Um,
Well, except
so
in this one, nobody gets raped by a werewolf in the
that's
backyard.
that is true. That is true.
That's one of those
Um,
scenes that just lives in my head forever.
oh, that's rough. That's true. You're right. So, so there's, but he's still doing some of those things. We're just not seeing them. I mean, we see him seducing and bending people to his
Yeah.
will.
Okay,
So
can we talk about that? Like
which
that's
is
a
a
huge
little
part of this
weird.
film.
We are going to talk about that. So maybe we should just jump into it then.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know that we need to go through every part of this, but however,
No.
like in the beginning, there's like a montage of him having establishing this loving relationship that Vlad Dracula has with Elizabeta, his young princess wife. And they're ensconced in some chamber of his castle, just smearing food on each other and having sex. Like this is their happy place. They seem to be quite good here. And then his soldiers come in are like, "Sir, the enemy's at the gates. You got to go." And I found it really weird and jarring how many times they physically pull him away from his wife and like to put his armor on. Um, small, maybe a small gripe, but I was just like, this is your lord, your liege lord, and you're like putting hands on him and moving him around. And if he doesn't want to go to the battle, then just go take care of business.
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot of this that feels, I mean, that's part of the story they're telling is that he doesn't have a lot of agency. Like
Mm.
he's forced to go and fight this Muslim army against his will when all he really wants to do is stay in his love shack.
Hmm. But he's forced to do it, and the only thing he wants is to keep his lady fair safe. So, I think I don't know. I think that this is they do a lot of build up here, and this is supposed to be the anchor by which everything kind of the story flows out of. Like this is his whole motivation. And while I thought that some of these scenes were super like beautiful, it just felt a little light in terms of the character development. I mean, we see that they are besotted with each other. There are some really great like just editing and sort of a montage of like I don't know, passion, what do you want to call it? But it's not to me enough that shows the grief and everything he's going through. I think they do kind of a good job after she dies.
Yeah, it
Um,
can only really be filled in afterwards because we get 20, not
mm,
even 20 minutes with these two. It
no,
just feels like two people really into each other,
yep.
but it doesn't necessarily translate to a love for the ages.
And interestingly, though, the critics of this, was more the sort of the um, professional critics, and this seemed to actually have a semi good reception in like from the audience. It's still only at like 53% on Rotten Tomato, but people did feel like this was sort of this like beautiful saga that, you know, hit this point across and liked the visuals. Although I did feel like the visuals were not they were just a little too over the top.
There were elements of the castle
Yeah.
that seemed really some of them were great, like the wall coverings, like the way that they had the like some of the rooms that they were filming in were amazing, and some of the things that they had on the walls were incredible. He's like very detailed inlays in the wall paneling, perhaps. Um, but then there would be a scene of like Dracula walking down the stairs at his castle, and his the balustrades on his stairs, it just looked like formed concrete.
Yeah.
It didn't look like anything that I would expect to see in a castle, let alone one that's supposed to be, in the in Victorian era. This looked like something that had been made in the last 6 months, and then
Yeah,
put
it
some
didn't.
tapestries around it.
And then I think we need to definitely talk about one of my biggest issues, or one of the things that just stood out to me as such an odd addition to this. I mean, we know just generally this is just part of the Dracula lore, is that he has these servants, both humans and some supernatural. Usually it's like werewolves or whatever. And he has this like little battalion of gargoyles, and that to me was the thing that made it much more cartoonish and strange, because I thought the CGI with these and the way they looked and the way and they use them a lot,
Yeah,
like,
they were very
and in
used.
a weird and just in a strange way. And that to me, like, that's the thing that I think, I don't know that you even needed that. But that, and
He
it
needed
wasn't
somebody to be his
somebody,
goons, but
but
then they made them dumb and comic.
right. And that's to your point, where I think the tone of this was kind of uneven and un it like weirdly strange. Like it just didn't hit, it kind of didn't stay consistent. Like you couldn't tell whether they were trying to just inject humor into parts of it, or this was like the vision. There was
I
just
think this
very
was what
odd
he was going
moments.
for. Like he knows he's making a horror film, but he's not interested in making horror, and so he makes it goofy.
Yeah, it just that really was a very odd to me. Just a very odd thing. And I kept being like, are they really going there? And this is just strange. And I know that he does like, I mean, we see it in like Fifth Element and other things. He likes to be he likes that idea of being, um, having that humor and comedic relief in different really serious moments. But I don't know that this fully blended in as a whole and made it better.
No.
It tended to take me out of it, I think. So that was just kind of, you know, um, I don't know.
It,
It just was an odd choice to me, and it just stood out as one that didn't make sense to me.
it doesn't work, frankly. It just doesn't
No.
work for the content that he like. I wonder how he came to this project. If this was clearly this is not a passion of his to do a vampire movie. So he was hired on, presumably, to do
Mm.
it. And I feel like, yeah, it shows that he's not interested in doing a gothic tale, a horror.
Mm.
Like the source material is not used enough. I'm fine with him moving it to France, like French it up, you know.
Yeah.
Frankly, like the work he does on satirizing the or mocking the culture
Mm.
of Versailles, I thought was actually pretty
Yeah, that
good.
was actually good. Yeah.
It's some of the more memorable parts of the film to me, or how he kind of, yeah, and that's like a pretty transcendental moment for Dracula too. Like that's when he first starts Draculaing people. Because weirdly, until then, like two-thirds of the way through his story, he hasn't been biting people at all, perhaps. He hasn't been drinking blood. He's just been, and this is the most confusing part to me, whoring himself, or like, yeah, like he makes a love potion, and it's love potion number nine, like the movie. And
Mm.
part of the reason for this is because he's been so sad about losing his wife that he now is waiting for her to be reincarnated, but he doesn't know when and where she's going to show up. And so he has to attract every woman in Europe.
Yeah, and that's very odd. Like, so I just don't understand why he was doing that. If he's that much in love with Elisabetta, he sort of says that this is in the like to be able to find her, but it also seems really odd.
And he's clearly enjoying himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like,
And
oh, seems like you're over your whole lost my wife situation.
yeah, and then the big scene where um there is a moment where he realizes, oh, by happenstance, Elizabeta is Jonathan Harker's fiance, and he like that actually when he goes to the convent, it's just this incredibly bizarre scene that I know he was going for the visual. Luc Besson was going for the visuals in this for sure, and
Hmm.
how obscene it is. But it was just very strange, and again over the top and kind of in the storytelling to make it as horrific as possible. But
And yet not showing you any of the horror.
right,
Like, is the
exactly.
horror just that he can make nuns forget their vows and run to
Except
him?
except the one, I guess. But yeah, and that actually was, you know. I did there's like moments where it's like he realizes that she's out there and he's like, "Oh, I can't look like this and I'm to gotta go and I need blood." And so, hey, it's a blood source, I suppose, but it's I think it was to contrast it with what we had seen before that this is he just really has no boundaries and no limits to what he's gonna do.
There's a
Be
fair
able
amount of fight choreography in this, but I'm thinking about Caleb Landry Jones, Dracula's supernatural powers here. He has a very mundane perfume that he worked for a long time. He basically Batmaned this thing, right? Like he spent money and he got this product, and he has a lot of it apparently.
mm,
And he's a good fighter before he becomes Dracula because he wins the battle and
yep,
he's seemingly able to defeat anybody in hand-to-hand combat.
yep. And I
When he
mean he's
becomes Dracula, does he get really any powers at all other than eternal
I don't
life?
know. I mean he does in that
He can move bowls of food around on the table, I
he
guess.
can light things, I guess, because those
Yeah.
all go out. He can
But
transform children into gargoyles.
well, does he? I mean, they just seem to show up suddenly, but yeah, maybe he did that. They
Yeah,
don't explain that at all until
they
the end.
don't.
Suddenly they're a bunch of kids and you're like, "What? Where do those kids come from?"
Yeah.
That was not a part of the story that I was expecting. It just feels like he is and Besson is a guy who likes superhero movies, or at least he did with Lucy, where Scarlett Johansson is like
Hmm.
a superpowered special agent or something. Like he could have made a cool ass superhero movie about Dracula here. But he kind of just
Yeah.
he doesn't seem to give him any enough, I would say. He doesn't give him enough superpower.
Yeah.
Because in the final battle, he's just kind of killing people quite in a mundane fashion. And they do make it into like a set piece, like a staged battle in his
Yeah.
castle, which is definitely not what you would expect of this kind of thing either. Usually it's like yeah, the priest, a couple guys running around with stakes, scared out of their minds, and trying to get the better of the vampire. Here they've got like an army.
Yeah, and I guess I was a little bit confused about how they managed to rally a whole army to basically take out
And
this.
whose soldiers are they? They're speaking a
Right.
language I don't know. Maybe it's Romanian,
But
but
it's
there's
and
nobody there from the state of Romania. Like they've got Spencer William Henry, the guy with three first names, who I could never remember which order they went in. He's the Queen's nephew and the Consul of England in Paris. Why is he even there?
right. And
They've got the priests who's from the Vatican, and they've got Harker and Dr. Dumont from Paris. Like these
right.
guys, what? I mean, those four, I get why. Well, except for William and Henry Spencer, I get why the other three are there because they have a stake in this.
Right.
But suddenly they're there with hundreds of soldiers and cannons and everything. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, that was a weird choice too.
They're coming in and they know that Elisabetta or Mina is in there.
Yeah,
And so that was the other thing. It's like we're gonna full on take out this castle with like cannons and other things. And
yeah.
like to me, it's like, well, what is their purpose here? Is it that everybody's rising up because they're against him? One would imagine that he would have basically paid off everybody to be in the good graces. The whole thing felt a little bit questionable and forced and just didn't make sense to me, except to show off Dracula's fighting skills, I guess, and how, this was a siege and I think in some ways to parallel it with the beginning of the film, and making, the decisions that are made at the end of this. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no, that's very true. Like they're continuing to shoot cannons at the castle after their
Right.
forces are inside the castle. Like, yeah, finally one of the soldiers yells ceasefire, but cannons are like a mile and a half away. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It was another pretty egregious problem with that final scene. But you raise a good point. Like, why would this army even be motivated to come and attack this castle? This guy apparently doesn't even like kill or terrify or terrorize the local populace. The coach driver seems to be at the beginning when Harker gets dropped off, gives him a crucifix and is like, "Hey, do you believe in God?" And he's like, "No." I have to think, would people just say that in Victorian era
Yeah, I
Europe?
don't
I
think
don't think
so.
they would. I think they'd be like, "Of course I do." I know I'm secretly an atheist. They would never say, "I don't believe in God." I,
No.
I don't think anyway.
Well,
Uh,
and also let's talk about that. The Jonathan Harker character is pretty pathetic, and
yeah.
he's
Yeah, like
just
what's
not.
he's like, "Oh, I'm not superstitious. I'm not scared of anything. I also don't believe in God,
Yeah,
but I'm very excited about my fiance." He brings up eventually when he's about to be killed.
yeah. Never heard about it before that, but cool, cool. And yeah, it was the whole thing with them is just really odd. I
There's
don't
just
know.
not much
It's,
there.
you
Though, because they spend most of the time persuading us that Mina Harker is awakening to her former life as Elisabetta, the Romanian princess or the Transylvanian princess. And so they had to spend a lot of time on that, which is weirdly all done at a fun fair.
yes. Oh, and we have to talk about this fun fair.
Do we
Well,
though?
I mean, it's so weird.
It's
And
such a
again,
long
this,
scene that doesn't help me very much. I don't know.
no,
Yeah.
and you
What's your
just,
issue with it?
not like, so if you're trying to make this be essentially like a courtship or a seduction, this is definitely not the setting to do it in, although I guess maybe there's a lot to distract. But he keeps showing up kind of lurking behind her in these strange ways and like in just sort of like super creepy ways with her. And I did not find it romantic at all. I did not think it was
Well,
something where
yeah,
she would be like, hey, yeah, this guy is just, I mean, they keep hinting that she might be having these like flashbacks, which they
yeah.
do from when he cuts her, sorry, when he kisses her hand and everything. But it's just very strange and again just jarring and a little bit over, like just a lot of overstimulation and strangeness going on with it overall. And then to have the broker of all of this be a friend that by her accounts she's only known a few days,
Yeah.
yet is sort of being pulled into these incredibly awkward and strange situations. Like would she even have trust with her? Maybe not. I don't know. That whole plot point just didn't seem to weigh. It didn't seem to make sense to me again.
But
So
they don't give Mina a ton of depth either
no.
because she doesn't seem to really know her fiance very well either. She says something to the priest and to Dr. Dumont earlier when they look at her and they realize who she is. She's like, "Yeah, I guess he comes from a really good family or something." Like she doesn't even know Harker's family, like, and she's engaged to him. And yeah, she'd met Maria 2 days before and had just been, I mean, you can accept that a vampire could, and usually like a canonical vampire could get somebody all aflutter just by being around them. These vampires apparently don't have that ability. They just have perfume. And who knows if Vlad even shares that with his minions, right? So, but basically, she meets a nice lady who is a manic person,
Yeah.
who I think maybe some alarm bells should be going off for Mina as she's hanging out with Maria based on the montage we get to watch of them hanging out.
Yeah.
She's like, she likes to talk about sex a lot, made me uncomfortable. But she was my best friend, so, and I'd known her for half an hour.
Yeah.
Pretty weird stuff. But yeah, so I think Mina, they kind of throw her into the deep end. She's like, I don't really know my fiance's family. I have one friend in Paris, and I've met her yesterday, and I apparently don't have a family or anybody else who I'm close to because I don't think twice about, you know, maybe she's being compelled and her inner life is coming to the fore, but they don't do any
Mm.
work to like make her more
No, no,
human.
it just isn't. It's almost like she's just this kind of blank, other than that she's a reincarnation visually of this of Elisabetta. And so that's, I mean, some of the things that I did like that I wish they had done a little bit more with is that you've had Vlad kind of going around creating this little army of minions. Would have been more interesting to see sort of a little bit more of what they were like actually doing. We see all of his seduction of them, but we don't actually see like how they are managing to search for her. We do get some of that backstory, which I'm fine if they don't want to over explain it, but you know, it's more um inferred. So we do know that like her wild and crazy friend is one of his minions and has been since his crazy time back at Versailles. And so she seduced this other person, and this is almost like a cover, I guess. But it doesn't seem to make sense to me because she's getting married to him, and part of why she goes crazy is because the priest shows up and she just goes nuts. And seems to me as if she would have been probably aware of the fact that a priest is going to show up to marry them. And
Yeah.
if you're like if you were supposedly this undercover agent, right? Wouldn't you have developed this skill set to allow you to be a little bit more subtle or keep undercover? Because her cover's blown pretty easily, and she doesn't exactly do a lot to keep herself out of being like out of the spotlight, so
And
to speak.
nobody seems to think this is a total deal breaker. Her fiance
Right,
certainly doesn't. She's like, "Oh my God, you feel better? How was your time at the hospital?" She's like,
right.
"Yeah, I feel feel a lot better. Yeah, I tried to kill the Bishop of Westminster. Yeah,
Oh,
and I also tried to have sex with you in front of all of our guests at our wedding.
yeah,
But bygones.
yeah.
Let's just move on."
Yeah, so there's like things like that, they just don't really explain and they just kind of you're just expect to accept. And so that those things were a little jarring to me because I just didn't believe that Mina would be trusting of her. And I also didn't believe that any of these people that had interacted with this woman are gonna, especially in this particular time frame, I think she's gonna go right back to an asylum. I mean, she escaped and we all know that, but even her husband, he might not know she escaped yet, but she's not exactly acting normal. She's kind of acting the same exact way. It felt odd and a sort of a loose thread that just didn't seem to really like be um, tied into everything. It was
Yeah.
just sort of like you're expected to just deal with it,
And if they're going to
essentially.
make these big swings of like suspension of disbelief, we need to have on the other side of the seesaw some sort of supernatural ability, which they seem to not have, other than
Right.
they can bite people and drink their blood and they live forever. But that seems to be the extent of mostly what
Yeah.
they can do.
Yeah.
So
So
it's a curious one. And then that character, her fiance Henry Spencer William, is just what's he for? He shows up later. I think
yeah,
he gets killed in the
he
fight.
does, but it's he just is this throwaway character, like
Very unnecessary. And maybe he's
so.
just there to be a speaking character who's going to die in the final battle because they don't want to kill Dumont, although he could have died. Sure, he doesn't
Yeah.
matter either.
Yeah. So yeah.
I cannot watch or think about this movie without thinking, God, Nosferatu was like 100 times better.
Yeah.
And I don't love being in that position because it feels unkind. But
Mm,
when you think about the story of Dracula, which we've done to death. It's like the origin story for Spider-Man, which we've seen a million times. There's so much other source material out there that you need to know what you're up against. And maybe he didn't know Nosferatu as he was making this, obviously, because that just came out 9 months ago or whatever, or maybe a year ago. But you should have at least been aware that the book it's based on is not like a bright, happy tale about putting on perfume and
no.
waltzing around in Europe.
Yeah. Um, and yeah. So like I just feel like a lot of this just felt like a lot of missed opportunity to me to just like expand on this story. And if you're going to go this way, explain a little bit more. I feel like it took the legs out from under it to make him so kind of cavalier about seducing all these other people. Um,
You don't
because
get to
then,
see him like consummate these seductions. He just seems to
no,
flock women to himself, smile a bit, and then
bite
we
him.
go to the next scene where he's doing it again at a different
Yeah.
ballroom, right? So I think maybe we're supposed to believe that that's all he's into.
I don't know. It just feels very, I mean, he's seducing him in the sense that I guess he's taking their blood and then making them servants. But
Eventually,
it just doesn't seem to, um, when he finally finds Elisabetta, it just feels like, okay, this is what your final goal has been all this time. And it just doesn't seem to be as weighty as I think it probably could be. And then the other part is that when he finally does get her and she remembers everything and they're going back to his castle, fine, fine. Um, there isn't really, even in her interactions with Jonathan Harker and figuring out what's going on with him, she doesn't know enough. Like she's worried about him. She's already upset when they're saying negative things about the Count. Um, but she's also like, oh, how could this be possible? Because this is my friend, and she says he's great and he's wonderful. And again, even at the beginning, she says, I've only known this woman a few days, right? So she's sort of putting all of her faith in this, and I guess you could assume that she's already been seduced by him, and that's what they're assuming too. But they don't do enough to develop her feelings and her motivations and anything with her character. She's so flat and two-dimensional that it doesn't really get the story across the finish line in the way that I think was intended.
yeah.
Because you need two people for a love story, not just this sort of construct. So yeah. And by the way, I don't think Nosferatu did a lot of favors either, but at least it
Yeah,
did try to,
we were
um,
obviously very it was pretty problematic, that final scene.
right.
And that wasn't a love story. Maybe it was like a possession story or something.
Mm,
Like sexual possession and demonic possession. This one, it was parading around like it was a love story, but then it was kind of hard to believe.
right. And even in the end, when, the priest kind of goes through the whole thing with him and says, you would be her damnation or whatever, like that's the end of the story, is that he basically makes this decision, he just put her through hell and now he's gonna like leave her. It just seems like an odd, again, a very odd decision to make. I will say the one thing I did like about it was that Jonathan Harker kind of is just like, yeah, guess it's over between us. He just kind of is defeated and walks away, and
It's
that's
such a
actually
pathetic,
it's
like
so pathetic.
it's like a deflating balloon ending.
Yeah.
He's like, I just crossed the seas in the also. Can we talk about how there's a shot of a wagon going across a border crossing between Romania and France?
Yeah.
Romania and France have never shared a border in the
Yes.
history of the planet. And
Yes.
I'm just like, this was made by a Frenchman who I guess was just like, you know what I've always wanted? To be closer to Romania. So he made it happen. He made it happen for this film. But so Jonathan Harker has traveled, from Paris all the way across the border to Romania, to this castle and fought tooth and nail, and then realizes that his wife really misses the guy she was just abducted by more than doesn't even really acknowledge his presence.
Yep.
She's yeah. And then he just sadly walks away. Also sadly walking away is the priest who's like, "Yep, it's over. Everything's fine now." That's the end. That's his like last line of the movie. It is done. Everything is now fine, or everything's fine now. And then he's like toddles off down the road, following the children of the gargoyle children who had also just walked away from the castle in their loincloths.
Yeah.
It is a silly kind of ending because he just persuades Dracula that what he's doing is the wrong thing to do, but he doesn't really have to try very hard to persuade him that. I mean, when Elisabetta finally realizes who she is, she's like, "I want to be with you." He's like, "No, no, you've got your whole life in front of you. I bring only death." But
Yeah.
really, what he only brings is everlasting life because he doesn't
Right.
have a huge horror component to his character.
Right.
I don't see the downside to Elisabetta and Dracula going off and living together and being happily ever after.
Same.
Like
Or at least they
they,
don't give you enough of the other side of it to
no,
think that that's actually the case. Yeah,
like all
exactly.
we've got is really the priest's word for it. Uh, I mean, what they have shown in this film too is that anybody who gets bitten becomes a vampire. And if that's the
Mm-hmm.
case, why aren't there millions of vampires in
Yep.
Europe?
Yeah.
Because they had the doctor's clerk also become a vampire after one bite from Maria.
Yep.
So there was an option here to make like the strain type contagion film, which I'm always on board for too, but they didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Lots of potential. Costumes were pretty.
Um,
Overall, not a good film.
yeah.
Like an
So,
expensive, well-produced, beautiful, not good film.
yeah, I mean, and some people just seem to be like, it's just like a fun little romp. But I think that there's a lot of potential here to be more unique and to be just a different interpretation. And to me, just the Coppola parallels were just way too close. So I don't know. It's um, I'm you know, and no fault on. I mean, look, I think the actors did the best that they could. So, you know, it's just not. They 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 did a very good job, and I think there were some very pretty elements to it. But I just, as a whole, I don't think that I would need to watch this again.
Oh,
So
hell no. I mean,
so
only as like an educational experiment. We were like, all
yeah,
right, these are all the Dracula movies ever made. Now let's
yeah.
rank them.
Yeah. And it would have been nice to see more of a Mina Harker or Mina Murray slash Elizabeta. Like I actually was kind of thinking that that's what they might do with it, is to make this more of a focus on her, because that would have made it stand out from all these others. But they did not. And again, the title is Dracula, so I guess I understand that. But it could have been an interesting way to interpret it that would have added something unique to it,
Wouldn't, I mean, as his bride, wouldn't Elizabeth's last name have been Dracula?
I guess.
So could have
Yeah,
worked.
guess so.
Well, H.A. Conrad, this was educational.
It was.
Some education is painful. Sometimes the lessons we learn must be seared into us. And in this case, it was that probably Luc Besson is not a horror director. I think that that's a fair thing to take away from this. And that's okay, but maybe he should focus on making other cool films that I would like to see. What we should try to do next time we get together on Reanimated is the film Silent Zone,
Yeah,
which we
which
know nothing
is,
about, but it could be good.
well, we do know that it's a Hungarian survival apocalyptic horror film. So we will learn more than that. So that came out last year. So we will do a viewing, and then we will do our review. But until then, thank you everybody for listening. And if you have thoughts on Dracula A Love Tale, please drop us a line at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think.
Alrighty.
And until next time, bye bye.
Toodles. Thank you for listening to another episode of Reanimated Podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, please email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can find the rest of our episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com. And you can often find us on Discord at the Brain Munchers Zombie Collective with a bunch of other zombie fans. Our intro and outro music is produced and recorded by Colin Diaz. Thanks for listening, and come on back for more zombie content from Reanimated Podcast.